Have you been seeing those super cute ruched button front dresses all over Pinterest and Instagram like I have? Right now I'm going to be making that dress. Hi and welcome back to my channel Modern Modiste. Be sure to check out my blog at www.modernmodiste.com where I post all the sewing tools and materials I use for my projects and written tutorials. And don't forget to subscribe to my blog. Thank you. I'm going to be using the pattern I made tracing just the regular shirt I have. And I'm going to be altering it to be my dress. So to decide how long I want the dress to be, I'm going to be measuring from my shoulder down to where I want it to come to. Here's the front piece. I took into account my hip measurement here, and I added 1/2 inch to attach the button placket, which is going to be a separate piece. And here's my back without that added inch. This is going to be cut on the fold here. I got to mark that so I don't mess up. This needs to be altered to allow for that cute gather that goes here in the front. So I'm going to alter this now and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. I had to add this light because the sunlight was just too extreme and I had to close the blinds. So we need a light to make up for the missing light. But look at it. It's like the letter C. We're gonna just trust the process. I'm cutting 2 of these with the stretch left to right, not up to down. And I marked at the beginning and end of the curved edge. I cut 2 sleeves and cut a 4-inch slit in each of them. I'm going to add a wristband to these. I'm cutting 2 pieces of fabric on the bias to finish the sleeve slits later. I'm gonna stitch a basting stitch that starts right above this mark and ends below this mark. I'm gonna back stitch up here and not down here so I can pull the thread and gather this. Okay, so let's try it. It's ruched. I like it. I think it's working. So let's do this side. So I just decided to go back and look at my references. I'm now seeing that the dress actually gathers all the way down. Goes all the way down. Okay, I did mine so that it stops like right there, but I like the look of it going all the way down. I'm just gonna start right alongside the end of that stitch, making sure not to overlap, and I'm going to extend it down a little bit and then gather that portion too and take a little bit of the gathering out of the top portion so that it's even. And I think it's so much cuter now. I'm glad I caught that before I sewed it together, because that's the kind of thing normally I wouldn't catch until after everything was sewn together. Okay, so it's dark in here now, so we're just using artificial lights, but I have my button placket prepped and ready. And I went and folded in 2 sides of this little bias strip to the center and then folded it in half again to press. and I'm going to sew it onto this sleeve here. So I just sewed the bias strip straight across the slit, then I folded it over the same way you would bias tape and sewed it in place. Then I went and laid the two sides of the slit together and sewed a stitch angled from the top to the edge and top stitched one side down like this. So I'm going to start attaching the dress back to the fronts at the shoulders. Okay, so the shoulders are attached now. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to attach my sleeves. It's the next day. Good morning. I have to get ready to go to work, but before I do, I'm going to close the sides. I have both my sleeves attached, and then I'll be back after work when the sun is blaring through this window. That's why the lighting's gonna change, and I'll finish the dress, hopefully. Okay, so this is where I'm at. I think it looks super cute and it looks on track with the goal. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on adding the front button plackets that I went and pressed yesterday. I'm gonna go add these to the front and then we're gonna see how it looks after that. So I'm doing this button placket the opposite way it's actually supposed to go. You're supposed to sew the little button panel to the front side first, right side's facing, then turn it to the back, then stitch in a ditch to attach it to the back, but I'm attaching it to the wrong side first. Let's go. I'm just going to go and I'm going to hem the bottom with a double fold hem. Then I press the seam toward the button placket and press the button placket in half again, pinned it in place, then I sewed it. I think it looks super cute. I have it pinned together right now. I still need to add buttonholes and buttons in the collar and the cuffs. It's getting late, I'm getting tired, but I want to at least add the collar today. To draw the collar, I took the neckline measurement and cut a rectangular piece of paper, that length plus seam allowance, by 1.5 inches. I curved the two edges and cut slits across the top to overlap to give it a curved edge. This is my collar stand. For the collar, I marked from where the curved edges begin on each side and measured 3 inches from that line to draw this very sloppy collar. Make sure to add seam allowance. Hi and welcome to day 3 of making this ruched dress. Hopefully today will be the last day of working on this project. I cut 2 of these collars, which are way more arched than they need to be, but it's still gonna work and I'm not gonna go change it because I know it's gonna work. I added interfacing to one of them. There's the other one with no interfacing. And here's my collar stand. One has interfacing. There's the other one which does not have interfacing. And lastly, I cut my sleeve cuffs. There's enough room on it to overlap itself, plus seam allowance, because the button's gonna go there. So let's get to attaching all these things. I sewed the 2 collars together right sides facing, then trimmed the corners and cut a zigzag on the edge to reduce bulk in the seam. I turned it right side out and top stitched. Then I hemmed this curved edge only on the collar stand with interfacing, then pinned it to the collar as well as the collar stand without interfacing, and sewed it all together. The back you can see is a little overlapping because this part's hemmed. And now it's time for the moment of truth, attaching this to my dress, and I hope it goes well because I do not feel like seam ripping and I want to be done. So let's attach it. The collar is sewn onto the neckline along the marked line, which is marked at where this collar stand half overlaps the other half. Then the hemmed half of the stand is folded over and sewn to the neckline. Okay, so it's pretty evident to me that both sides of the collar stand needed interfacing. I only did it on one, and that would work for a stiff fabric because this is a stretch fabric. Both needed to be stabilized, and that's why I have some wrinkling going on the outside of the standing collar. But you know what? That's okay. One sleeve cuff done. I added a little pleat there. Not very good placement, but you can't really tell when I'm wearing it. That's why you have to sit and think out your sewing and really consider what you're doing and not rush, because then you end up with little pleats that don't belong where they are. But you know what? It's okay because it fits and it looks cute still. Okay, so I have one side of the wristband hemmed. I'm going to sew the side not hemmed to the sleeve, right side spacing, leaving hem allowance extra on one side and button and hem allowance extra on the other. Then I hemmed the short sides and folded the wristband in half and sewed it in place. And now the very last step, the buttonholes and buttons. And I am tired, but I'm almost there, so I ain't stopping yet. I tried to sew my buttonholes using the buttonhole foot, but this fabric is not sliding like it should, so I'm manually sewing my buttonholes. Okay, I have my buttonholes sewn on carefully. And there we have an open buttonhole. Now I'm just going to open the rest of my buttonholes, and then I'm going to sew my buttons.